Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. On Mac Sports and the Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook pages, the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel, also on Twitter and Instagram. Like, share, comment, and please subscribe to the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel for all the great Northeast Streaming Sports shows. Our website is nessp.info. Check it out. We have our shows, information on guests in our shows, stores, and links to those stores. I'm Mac, and normally my co-host during the week is the great Jack Hirsch, but today I have Keith Angle from TGI Sports Talk subbing in for Jack today. Jack is on vacation. That's right, folks. He's on vacation. He has a better agent than I do. Well, you know, Jack is a very busy man, Keith. I mean, he's not only a boxing writer for Boxing News. He's been doing that for over 40 years. But he's also a grandfather and father, and he's down in Florida right now. Good morning, David. And he's kind of in the midst of grandchildren heaven right now. So he can't really get out of the show. I told him to bring the grandkids on, but he didn't think it was a good idea. So anyway.
Can you imagine a bunch of little Jacks running around the show with you? I mean, come on, Mac.
That would be great, wouldn't it? All of them interrupting me, talking over me. It would be awesome. So today, Keith, on our show, we got scheduled in the Philly sports guy, Jamie Pags, will be coming in back from the draft where he was live doing reports for us on Northeast Streaming Sports Show. And, he'll be sharing his views on that and all Philly sports. We also got coming in one of my favorite, most knowledgeable Giants broadcasters, the busiest man in broadcasting, Lance Meadow, will be joining us around the 9 o'clock hour. The man knows everything about the Giants, and we'll be having him on talking about the draft and stuff like that. So, great. Keith, today on Wednesdays on the show here, we do our MLB review, where we take a in-depth look at the standings, the games, and any news out there that's going on in baseball. Sure. So we're gonna get to that here right now. So Keith, in the AL East right now, Boston is still in first place at 18-12. The Yankees have moved up and are tied with the Rays in second. The Blue Jays are at 500. Baltimore's at 14-16. In the Central, Chicago and Kansas City are tied in first at 16-12. Cleveland at 15-13, followed by Minnesota and Detroit, who was already mathematically out at 8-22. In the West, we have the A's at 19-12, Seattle 17-14, followed by Houston, the Angels, and the Rangers. In the National League East, Phillies at first at 500, and the Nats, Mets, Atlanta, and Florida are all bunched together, only 2 games separating the last place team from the first. In the Central, the Cards are at 17-12, Milwaukee 17-13, followed by the Cubs, Reds, and Pittsburgh. And finally, in the West, San Francisco is in first at 18-12. The Dodgers have gone 2-8 in their last 10 games.
Yeah.
And 17-14, tied with San Diego, Arizona, then the Rockies. You know, Keith, there's always a couple surprises in Major League Baseball every year.
There's a few.
Yes, and is San Francisco going to be one of those teams, you think?
You know, my gut said early on no, but, as they continue to play decent baseball, I mean, they're only 5-5 in their last 10. You can't count them out. I mean, the organization is always been a fairly strong organization until the last few years. Not a big fan of Gabe Kapler as the manager. That's probably the biggest drawback for me with San Francisco. Light in pitching. I'm just not sure that In fact, I'm positive they can't hang with the Padres and Dodgers all year long. The Dodgers aren't going to go, through this type of spell for long. I can't see. So I don't know that the Giants can keep up with those two teams. There's just too much firepower between those two.
How about the Milwaukee Brewers, Keith?
The Brewers were my favorite to win that division. I like the Brewers a lot. Their starting pitching is really, really good with Burns and Woodruff and Anderson behind them. There's somebody else I'm missing. It's not coming to my mind, but their starting pitching is really good. Craig Counsell is a great manager. We're talking about managers with Gabe Kapler. Counsell's the opposite. I think he's a great, great manager, and he's had a team with less talent than a lot of other teams in contention year after year now for quite some time.
So we got the Red Sox sitting at 18-12, and me and Jack have talked about this. Of course, he doesn't think the Red Sox will beat in at the end of the year, and not that I think they're going to be a first place team.
Yeah,
but I think with Cora over there, been to a couple World Series, a few World Series really. And
yeah, well, actually, we know why he got to or had some help getting to at least one of them.
True, but still, that's been going on for years, Keith. I mean, that's not
with the same technology, though. It's a little different when you're in a stands with binoculars than some of the things they were doing.
Let me tell you something.
Buzzers on the jerseys. It's
let me tell you something. Back in 1919, the New York Yankees had a system, and there was a cable that was actually run underground to one of the billboards.
Yeah.
And the H in the cable could be moved to tell the batter what kind of pitch was coming, whether it's a fastball, curveball, and there was actually a guy out there with binoculars that was checking the catcher. As I said, Keith, this has been going on for years. Now they might.
I don't disagree.
It might be a little bit more technologically advanced, but it's still been going on. And even though they may have seen or known what pitches are coming, Cora still did a great job with the Red Sox. And I still think today managers, whether people believe it or not, do matter. And like I said, I'm not saying the Red Sox are going to end up in first place this year, but I bet they're going to be a lot better than people think.
No, managers do matter, as I just pointed out with the Counsell example and Kapler. I think the Giants won't stay up there because of it. And if the Red Sox do stay in contention, you're absolutely right. It'll be in great part because of Joey Cora. I mean, this is a team that is not that strong when you look at them on paper. At least their starting pitching has a lot of holes, at least until maybe Sale comes back. Their bullpen's iffy. And they got some holes in their lineup around. They got some great players still in Devers and the shortstop Bogarts.
Yep.
But again, I know you have more confidence in them being able to stick around than I do. I still think it'll be the Yankees and the Blue Jays and the Rays at the end fighting it out for that division. But I had Boston picked to finish last. That may not happen either. So.
Hey, listen, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. Every year. There's a couple teams that reach out there and they kind of surprise everybody. I think Boston could be one of them. So we'll see what happens. And the locals scores, Keith. The Yanks beat Houston 7-3. 4-run six kind of puts away the Astros. Stanton goes 4 for 5 with 3 RBIs. Herman pitches 5 innings, gives up 3 runs, strikes out 6. So the Yankees are starting to kick into gear a little bit. And, like it or not, and I don't, Stanton is a part of that right now.
Right now.
Yeah, so if he stays healthy, the Yankees offense, which is very good, and Herman does a decent job, the Yanks could make a run this year.
I've said all along they'll make the playoffs. My problem is they're not built to win in the playoffs. Now, that could change. They've started to make some of the changes, little changes anyway. The fact that Sanchez is no longer the number one catcher is a huge deal. Yeah. I mean, I got in arguments early. I've been saying this since before they even started last year's shortened season, that Sanchez had to go. He just has regressed every year since his first 2 years with the Yankees, every year. And guys would say, well, what's the alternative? Higgy's a better catcher and a better hitter than Sanchez right now today. I don't care if you bring anybody else in. He's a better player.
Very true.
And the other thing that's really, besides obviously the bats have started to come alive, including Stanton's, but I'm with you. I'm not a huge Stanton backer. I got into a back and forth with a couple people last night during the game about, well, we won't see any negative Stanton posts now. I said, well, you'll see them from me because this won't continue.
Right.
But and here's the thing you can't also dispute. The starting pitching has been much better the last 10, 12 games, whatever. You saw the game that Kluber pitched on Sunday. It was a masterpiece. Great. Best game outside of Garrett Cole's been pitched in, I can't remember how long with the Yankees. So that's very encouraging. Herman pitched well last night. My feelings about him aside, on the ball field, he's playing well, pitched well last night. Bullpen pitched well. They're firing on all cylinders right now, and this is the Yankee team we expected to see. But come playoff time, I still wonder.
I agree with you, Keith. I think signing LeMahieu, a couple moves had to be made. First, They either had to get rid of Voit and put LeMahieu at first, find a shortstop, and move Torres back to second.
Yep.
Or they shouldn't have signed LeMahieu, and they decided to sign him. So those moves should have been made. They haven't been made yet, and I think come playoff time, we'll see. I don't know. The pitching was a big question mark. It looks like they have somewhat of a staff now.
Yeah.
Still, construction-wise, I'm not sure.
Again, still problems on defense, as you mentioned. Torres is not a shortstop. They should have made some moves where he's playing second base. I mean, Odor's played well over there and had some big hits. He's still, hitting $164 though overall. And look at LeMahieu's a great player, and he can play first or second. You're not hurting yourself by moving him from second to first base. But Torres is the big problem. He's starting to hit a little better. You got to make the plays. Just make the plays, the simple plays. You don't have to be Francisco Lindor out there. You don't have to be a flashy, great defensive player. Just make the everyday routine plays. So that's where they're going to get hurt come playoff time. And situational hitting is still a problem, right? And just baseball instincts on some of these guys is not what it should be. And you got to hold the whole organization accountable for some of this. It's Cashman, it's Boone to some extent. I'm so tired of, and I know you're not a Cashman fan, and neither am I right now either. I mean, this is his team and has been for quite some time, and we have the same problems year after year. But Boone has got to stop, and he has done this to some extent the last week. Since they started playing well, he's been tougher on these guys. I'm tired of seeing him come on to post-game press conferences and make excuses for Aaron Judge getting thrown out at third base with 2 outs in a rally in the 8th inning. You can't give a guy an excuse for that. Bad baseball. That's it, Aaron. Just say what it is. So,
well, speaking of, we were just speaking of the Red Sox. They had a 4-run first inning. They kind of hold on to 11-7 win.
Yeah.
The Red Sox drive in 2. That's the, let me see. Yeah, 3 the difference. Renfroe Hunter went 3 for 4. So 3 different Red Sox drive in 2 runs. Renfroe goes 3 for 4. Pivetta pitched good game. Bryce comes in and gives up 4. I mean, I bet Pivetta was not too happy with it. So the Red Sox are still winning, Keith.
They are still winning. They've got, again, that one of the big reasons I think is that iffy starting pitching that I've talked about is pitched pretty well, including Pivetta. He's had pretty good, and they're not asking these guys to go deep, so the bullpen's picking them up. All the things I think will be a problem over time. Right now, they're doing very, very well. They're getting some really timely hitting. A really big pickup for them was Verdugo from the Dodgers. He just didn't have a place to play over there, and I think he's a really, really good player. And, if they stay up there, it's going to be because guys like him and Renfroe, who replaced some longtime talented players there, carried their weight. Vasquez, the catcher, has pitched. Yeah, he's played very well, I think, too.
Yes, he pitches on every other week.
Yeah,
David. Yes, I believe yes, is it time to get rid of Cashman. Listen, I think Cashman was effective when George Steinbrenner was running the team, and he kind of did what George wanted. He worked together with George. George says, "Get this guy, get that guy. Here's the money. Go get him." It's a different situation there right now. He's trying to be inventive, and being inventive means in the last, I say, 3 or 4 years, he'd rather have a good relief staff than a good starting pitching staff. We're starting to improve now. Hopefully it keeps going that way. If the Yankees can continue adding good starters over the next couple of years, no, don't get rid of them. Because I don't care how great your relief staff is. if you're behind 4-0, in the first inning, it really doesn't matter how great your relief pitchers are. So that kind of strategy that Cashman has employed, thinking there's maybe another Mariano Rivera out there, there's not. He's one of a kind. And I think as long as he continues picking up good pitchers or bringing up good pitchers from the farm system, you hold on to him. But a lot of people don't remember, but should remember Cashman was very effective when George Steinbrenner was around. Now, not so.
I don't want to see them revert. When you remember, people forget, especially younger people, that from 82 to 96, 94, really, the Yankees were just terrible. Terrible. And this will go against your Steinbrenner analogy a little bit. They didn't get better until George got suspended, and Gene Michael and Buck Showalter were allowed to kind of have free reign pretty much. And they rebuilt that organization, and they won. Joe Torre's a great manager, but Stick and Buck built that team, and it was built around defense, pitching, timely hitting. Not guys hitting 40 home runs, and there was no Stantons on that team. And that's how you need to build a team to win. Even today, the game hasn't changed, right? The way baseball wants to play and the way Rob Manfred wants the game to be played is different. They want to sell home runs, although they're down this year tremendously. Offense is like really bad in a lot of places. But I'm okay with that. The game needs to revert back to something that it is. It's gotten to be something I don't like watching some nights. Home runs, walks, and strikeouts. It's like unwatchable. And Kevin's falling into that trap.
I agree with that. We got the Philly guy backstage right now. Pags is backstage. So let me finish up with the locals here. The Phillies sneak by Milwaukee 6-5. Milwaukee gets 4 in the 7th. Right fielder Brad Miller gets 3 RBIs for the Phillies. Nola pitches outstanding, and the familiar thing happens again. They pull him out after a certain amount of time, and they almost lose that game.
Yeah, because we're just pushing buttons. It says he has to come out. Doesn't matter what he's doing. The card says take him out of the game.
It's just nuts.
It's awful.
So the Mets will be playing today against St. Louis. They didn't play last night. So let's bring Pags up. How are we doing today, Pags?
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Hello, Pags. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Excellent. So Pags, as you heard backstage there, of course, your Phillies with their so many innings, pitches limit. What happened in the playoffs?
Joe Girardi.
How about and like what happened with him? Like what is going on with him? He couldn't even get the lineup card right.
Yeah.
There was. I mean, that's what I come in listening to this morning was like, I'm like, the lineup card was messed up. I mean, what is going on? Like, he used to be a great manager. Now all of a sudden he forget how to manage. Is that what's going on here? Is it like I can't seem to figure out what's happening?
I never thought Girardi was a great manager, to be honest with you. He goes by the book and he reads those index cards, and Aaron Nola comes out of games just because it says it's time to come out, and teams tend to play tight too because Joe's not a loosey-goosey guy, right? He's kind of wound pretty tight, and sometimes his teams take on his demeanor, which is part of the problem. As far as getting a lineup right, that's a different story. He might have, who knows? He might be hungover from the draft. I don't know.
He might be. I mean, who knows? I didn't see him down there though, so I mean, I figured he would have stood out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, I think so too. And speaking of. Pags, you're back from the draft, and you were down there as a Philly sports guy and then having a great time. What interests me about that, and I'm not really going to talk about the picks too much, is what the NFL does that no other sport does, right? They make events out of things. Yeah. It's not just drafting players. This is a party where you have thousands and thousands of people outside standing in the rain because they want to be there. You got fans going crazy. The NFL brings the draft picks in with films and video and cameras in their houses, talking about their lives. I mean, don't the other sports get it? I mean, could you feel the excitement out there outside before you even got inside, Pags?
Absolutely. I mean, so I was lucky to live in Philadelphia where they really started this whole trend. And watching it happen here, even when people were going up to New York, and watching it there. I don't know that the other sports have the type of fanfare to be able to make that happen like that. Like basketball may, like they might be able to do something similar, but I mean, they were talking about some numbers. I mean, so when they're doing the picks on Saturdays, they go over a lot of the numbers and they do a show that has nothing, that doesn't really make it to television. And they said that there were more people that were watching the draft. There was like 14 million people that watched the draft on Thursday night. There was only 10 million people that watched the NBA finals.
Yeah.
So there is so many different, demographics that are much more interested in football in comparison to all of the other sports. It's worth it for them to make this big hoopla and make this all very exciting. And of course, then you have fans, the super fans that come out of the woodwork, and it makes it even more fun. I mean, I'm privileged to call myself one of them and to be, to get into those types of spaces, and because it's not simple, it's not easy. Like the Eagles haven't really, didn't say, hey, listen, why don't you go ahead and go and we'll get you a ticket. I had to dance to be able to make that happen. And luckily for me, the NFL's excited to have me there. They're, by Saturday, they were like, they want him in there. They're just going to pull him in, just get him in there. You know what I mean? Just we don't have to worry about, whatever. Just give him a ticket.
I think I saw you. I think I made a comment in our group chat. I saw you more than I saw you and True Blue. I saw on the screen more than I saw Mel Kiper, I think, on Saturday. It was.
Well, we were better looking than he is.
Well, that goes out there.
True. But Bags, what I mean is that the NFL doesn't just appeal to football fans, right? They got fantasy football where anybody plays and they follow the stats. They got, the FanDuels, they got DraftKings, they got legal betting now. I mean, the NFL, and I credit NFL Films a lot with this, the beginning of NFL Films. When they started putting the music to it, the first ones to do it, to actually feature people, feature stories, and the NFL just took that and ran with it and made this, as I was saying, not just a draft, but an event. I know baseball and hockey are tough because they have a minor league system, and I understand that, and they got to wait sometimes years to get. Sometimes they never make it into the.
They're trying to copy it, though. They're trying to copy the model.
I mean, I just think it's almost impossible. How you can get excited by somebody that might not even play for 5 years? I mean, what are you going to do? You got to watch them in the minors, so that's tough. Basketball, on the other hand, in the draft, they can play right away.
Right.
And basketball doesn't even take it behind the scenes like football. I just think football, and like I said, I credit NFL Films. They really tell a story, and they really do that during the draft. While you were inside, I saw you were with the commissioner. You were with all these. Do these guys just come up to you, or do you go hustle them up, or how does that work, Bags?
So in some cases, for instance, when the commissioner comes out, he comes out to take pictures, he gets mobbed. As much as they boo him, is as much as everybody wants to get their picture with him. And so you just wait in line and you wait your turn. When Michael Irvin came out, though, he doesn't typically like to take pictures with Eagles fans. So I got to like block him in. He was stuck. He actually came over and shook my hand and says, "You got me. I don't like taking pictures with Eagles fans." So, I mean, I was able to get myself, just put myself in the right position at certain times. I've been hearing from everybody that they did see me on TV an awful lot at the draft. And I don't, of course, I'm not watching television, so it's hard for me to really see and see what's going on. I know when the camera gets in front of me, and there's not, even though there's some fanfare and there's a lot of guys that are dressed really well, there's not many people who can bring the energy like I can, and that's why they continue to come back to me. And, just because I'm me. It's not anything special, and it's not like I don't pander to the camera. I don't want to come across that way. I'd rather bring other people on with me so that they can get some spotlight. It has nothing to do with me. This is about the NFL, and this is about having a good time and enjoying it. And the fact that they show me as often as they do is really I don't know. I guess it's just more about the NFL saying, hey, this is what embodies the fan here, that this guy is, shows the excitement and the exuberance that we want all fans to feel. And I'm privileged, that they show me as often as they do.
Well, great. You did a great job for us down there at PAGS, and thanks for that. In the draft, speaking of, the Eagles moved up. They got their guy, Devontae Smith. They ended up getting a center, which is kind of rare. Landon Dickerson. But then they go all defense. They get a couple defensive tackles, a cornerback, and stuff like that. Do you think they addressed all their needs, PAGS, or do you think there's something else better they could have done there?
So the biggest thing that I hear, especially from the Philadelphia contingent, is that their second round pick. First off, the first round pick was absolutely amazing. I love watching Cowboys cry. I love watching the Giants cry. And both of them cried within 3 minutes time. It was fantastic for me. I loved watching all of that. In fact, I even did a quick little video to a Cowboys fan who was so angry that Denver chose Patrick Surtain that it was, that he's ready to go home. And and I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm sitting there laughing at him. And then to watch some of the reactions from the Giants fans because we jumped up and traded with Dallas, the enemy of our enemy is our friend, to be able to take Devontae Smith. And that, everybody's super excited about him. But the second round pick, taking Landon Dickerson, I love the pick. You know me. I want offensive and defensive linemen. That's how championships are won. Yep. That's what you're going to do. This guy is, I know he's been hurt a lot, but he is a great locker room presence. He is, probably the best, offensive lineman in the draft if he doesn't get hurt. And the fact that he does get hurt starts to weigh, but the truth of the matter is that as you get older, I think that things start to get better. I know that the Eagles staff, but that was where they felt that they should have grabbed a cornerback rather than, solidify the offensive line. I love the pick. I think this guy's going to be an Eagle for his career. When you can find somebody who you can keep for 15 years, you grab him rather than getting a cornerback. There were a lot of cornerbacks that were taken in the 4th and 5th round. And I was talking to somebody from NFL Network who said, because of the way that this season worked out, there's a lot of these cornerbacks that did not get the type of play that they would normally get. So that there should have been a lot more 2nd and 3rd round picks that wound up falling to the 4th and 5th round because they, didn't get enough play time. They just, their COVID kind of ruled the world, and they're just not getting the type of thing. There's also a lot of undrafted free agents that are going to wind up coming out specifically this year, that there's going to be more undrafted free agents that'll wind up on starting rosters than have ever been in the NFL since before the draft even really happened. And I kind of believe that because, again, there wasn't enough time to make all the videos and tapes. There wasn't enough time. You didn't get in-house to be able to talk to your staff the way you would normally and be able to collaborate on some of this film and such like you normally do. It's one thing when you're doing it on Zoom. It's another thing when you're doing it face-to-face. And so I believe that they're going to have to address some of the other holes that they have with these undrafted free agents. And but I was really excited about this draft, specifically because Howie hasn't gotten many right as of late. Like the previous years, he has not done very well. I don't think I gave the draft a B+. I also would have liked to see a little bit more on the cornerback side. Obviously, I didn't think that we needed a wide receiver, but when you get the guy who's got this much hardware, how do you turn him down? So
he's a generational player. I've been saying it since the beginning. A lot of teams are going to be unhappy they didn't take him 15 years from now. So,
well, I hope that is the case, and I hope that he's a Hall of Famer and goes in there. And I'm going 15 years to to Canton, Ohio, to watch him get inducted.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, listen, you never know. college and the pros, of course, are two different sports. He reminds me a lot of Tim Brown, who used to play with the Notre Dame and went to the Raiders.
Pretty good player.
A little light, yeah, Hall of Famer. A little light, but very, very great patterns, a lot of good speed. I think it's a great pick, Pags. I really do. So let's head over to the 76er land for a minute. You guys now have a 1.5 game lead over the Nets. The last game, you guys beat the Bills 106-94. And you've got at least five out of the next 6 games, Pags, are very winnable. I think you got one really tough team in there. I can't remember off the top of my head who it is, if it's Phoenix or Denver or one of those teams that might give you a little run for your money. But pretty much the next 5 out of 6 games, if everybody plays, you should win those too. I'm thinking that you guys forget the Nets. I think you guys are going to win that division.
I agree. We looked at this at the beginning, middle of the season, saying that the last 10 to 12 games are going to be cakewalk. And if they needed to catch up, that was going to be the time. If they were going to be in the lead, that was just going to solidify it. And I agree. As long as everybody's playing, that they don't even have to play bring their A game, and they should win most of these games. And my expectation is that they're going to have a little bit of a run going in. I feel that the last time, and I feel like this is when you start to put everything together and you make sure the switch gets turned on. And I felt like the switch got turned on against San Antonio when you won that in overtime on the tap in by Simmons, who had scored 5 points that entire game, but those 2 points obviously won the game. And I felt like that's where the switch got turned on. And now I don't think that they're going to be stopped, and I think, as I said it all along, I thought they were going to be number 2, be the second seed going in to the playoffs. They wound up, exceeding my expectations. I still think they wind up representing the East, and they're going to be playing against an LA team. Not sure which one yet, but they're
who
going
do you
to
see as their major competition in the East? I don't think it's the Nets. I think the Nets are going the wrong way. They haven't had their guys play together enough, as we've talked about going into the playoffs. Who do you see as their major threat in the East?
The Bucks. The Bucks. Yeah, the Bucks are starting to to come together pretty well. I also get nervous about these play-in games. That's where you start to see the Cinderella stories a little bit. And I see Washington now is going to be, I think they're going to be in the playoffs. I think they're going to upset the Celtics or whoever winds up in that number 7 seed, because I think the Celtics are now in the number 6 seed. And I think that because of that, that's going to wind up, it's going to be a much tougher series than would be expected, because you expect to just kind of roll over on them. But
Westbrook's unconscious right now.
Right, and same thing with Beal. Those two guys can take over a series, and I think that's going to be a much stronger challenge, because if they upset them, they're going to be the low seed, and they're going to wind up playing the Sixers.
Yeah,
and the Sixers defense is going to have to come and play. You're not going to be able to sit down on Washington at all, and I think that's going to be a really tough series, and I think that will prep them for the Bucks. I think that the Bucks, I agree. I don't think that the Nets are good enough to be able to represent in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think it's going to be the Sixers and the Bucks. I think the Bucks are going to have a little bit of swagger because they feel like they're going to be able to beat the Sixers, and I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
Well, the games are all about matchups, right? I mean, you can have a great team that's in first place, but they could have a losing record against a team that's in 8th place because the matchups are no good for them. For instance, the 76ers, I say the 2 best defenses in that division right now are probably the Knicks and the 76ers. And you got 2 offenses that are very powerful with Milwaukee, and even whether you like it or not, the Nets, if they're all 3 are on all cylinders, are going to put 130 on you if you don't have a good defense. So I think that matchups are going to be very important here, where I think Philly can shut down a major offense or at least keep them close. I think the Knicks can compete. I don't know if they can shut them down and win games, but they'll lose by 1 game against a very good team or whatever. They'll make you scrap to win it. So right now, that's your top 4 guys. You got 2 good defenses with a little bit of offense, and then you got two real good offenses with a little bit of defense. So it's going to be interesting to see how these four teams right now, if they ended the season, how these four teams are going to match up against the rest of the division that have, that they're going to have matchup problems with.
Next finish in the right spot with the right matchup, they could win a couple series, I think, and do some damage. But they got to have the right matchups, as you said, Mac.
I agree. I agree. I think that they would get past the Heat. I believe same thing with the Celtics. So, and that's kind of where they're at.
I think they'll give the Bucks a series too if they end up playing them, or the Nets. I don't think they'll beat the 76ers, obviously, in a 7-game series, but they'll give the Bucks and the Nets a scare, I think, if they match up with them and if they get past the first round. So.
And if we hold serve, I'm sorry, Mac, if we hold serve, they're going to wind up playing the Sixers, and they won't see either one of those teams.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
See, the 76ers, the thing different about the 76ers, and this is why, as you know, Pags, I've been on the Sixers train all year. They got a good defense, but they also got that offense. You guys got Embiid, you got down low, you've got Harris, you got Simmons who could pour it on and give you some offense and plays a great defense. The Knicks really only got one real good offensive player. I mean, Barrett's good, but I mean real good. They really got one guy that can carry the team. You've got a couple guys that can carry the team if everybody gets shut down. Yeah. And that's what I think gives you guys the advantage of winning that division. So that should be very, very interesting. The matchups. I love matchups. Matchups are the greatest because I don't care how talented your team is. It's the matchups that normally either have you win or lose. So back to the Phillies.
Mac, don't forget that we're going to get terribly outcoached because Thibodeau's a horrible coach. Where's Carlos today anyway?
Carlos is in hiding. So listen, I don't give him any play. I let him put the comments up. He loves the troll, so that's so back to the Phillies. You're 500 in a tough division, right? Now, they're talking about, this is what I was reading in Pags, they're talking about putting Nick Matone in center field from second base. They don't want to lose his bat. You're hurting out there in the outfield right now. He's batting .327 with like 5 doubles already. So they're talking about moving him into the outfield, perhaps center field. What's your thoughts on
that? So I have... of course, I have been a little wishy-washy on this. I feel that I would much rather have the defense in center field than the bat. That everybody else should be doing pretty well. I mean, we haven't even gotten into hitting weather yet. So I fully expect that the Phillies will start to score some runs the way that they did before. I'm still nervous about this bullpen. The bullpen's starting to evolve back into what it was last year, and that makes me nervous. However, so putting him out there, got to make sure he doesn't miss anything. That's what I'm saying. I don't want him. I don't want to give up. I don't want to give up errors in the field for a bat, and take that for whatever it's worth. I would much rather see them have somebody out there who is going to make the plays. So if he's going to go out there, he better make sure that he's getting 98% of those plays. You don't want to see him having an error a game, because that's going to wind up costing losses. You know what I mean? And again, you're going to win 60, you're going to lose 60. It's what those other 42 mean. And those other 42, like every error that he has that costs him a game falls into that 42. And that's what I want to see. I want to make sure that doesn't happen.
Gotta be strong. Gotta be strong up the middle. You're right. You can't give away runs, and especially in this division. This division is going to be tight, I think, all year. So
right. And how ridiculous is it that it's starting to look more like the NFC East? Right. You know what I mean? That it's everybody is 500. This is supposed to be the best, and I think it's more the touting, it's like that they, the moment that the media says, hey, this is going to be a really strong division, next thing you know, it's not. So, because I mean, the Braves are having problems, the Mets are having issues. I mean, out of nowhere, Washington started off horribly, and next thing you know, they're wind up leading the division. So it's with a 500 record. So I believe that just a game or two over 500 is really going to be able to win this division, because they're going to beat each other up. And our big our biggest nemesis in this division, we haven't even played yet. The Florida Marlins seem to have the Phillies number every time they play. And that is going to be a really telltale. Are we going to be able to win this year against them, or are we going to do like we do every year? If we wind up 5-17 against them, I don't give us a chance. If we have to be more 500 or a little above 500 against them. I want to see that they can beat them. This is still not a very good team, the Marlins, and yet they seem to just beat us up all the time. And if we played better against them last season, we'd have been in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But
they're not as good a team this year as they were last year either. So
right.
Good morning to you, Tom. How you doing this morning? Thanks for joining us. Pags, you talked about Joe Girardi and what happened to him. Yeah, I don't think it's Joe Girardi. I think there's pressure coming from up above with the GM. I think the analytics is being run above Joe Girardi. I think Joe Girardi doesn't really give a damn about analytics, but he wants to keep his job. I mean, he already got pretty much fired from the Yankees because he butted heads with Cashman. So if he's going to go and get fired by the Phillies, he's done. The man is done. If you get fired by two teams, you're all set. So I don't believe that Girardi is making these analytical calls. Trust me.
I believe. No, you look at Terry Francona. That guy's still got a job, and he's been fired by just about every Major League Baseball team. So I'm not really saying I don't think that that's true. You know what? But he was a hard-nosed coach up in New York, and he's not coaching hard-nosed here. And I'm not sure why he's not. Like there's been a disconnect in some way, shape, or form. I know that he had 2 years off, and maybe he softened a little bit, but Philly is not any different than being in New York. In fact, in some cases, it's harder being in Philly because there isn't a second team that takes some of the limelight away. If the Yankees are doing well, nobody really cares about the Mets. If the Mets are doing well, everybody can be a little softer on the Yankees. Here, you only have the Phillies. And if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, it's going to be known, especially because we love our sports here. So you have to be the coach that we want you to be. And he's not being that coach. And we're not sure why. He did butt heads with Cashman, and he did do these things to be able to get the type of I guess the way that you are. That's the way he was. He played that way. He played hard-nosed. He seemed to be a hard-nosed coach. And he's not doing that. And it's puzzling. It's puzzling Philadelphia fans.
Well,
if I can interject real quick, Mac, I will disagree with the fact that Joe Girardi doesn't buy into analytics. He's bought into it from the very beginning. But we talked about this on your show a few weeks back. The front offices all have way too much influence on the lineups and the way the game is played. And there's a script before every game, and that's how it's going to go. And that's why Aaron Nola gets taken out. Aaron Nola gets taken out last night when he did.
And another point, there is another Philadelphia team, Mags, whether you like it or not. The Pittsburgh Pirates, I think, play over down there in Pennsylvania.
Well, that's not Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, once you get out of Philadelphia, Delaware County, everybody else, once you get into like Lancaster and that, they all start to become Washington fans or Pittsburgh fans. Philadelphia is its own contingent. So,
listen,
Pirates, who was the last time anybody thought about the Pirates?
You do have another team in Pennsylvania, Pags. I mean,
I understand, but that's on the other side of the world from Philadelphia.
Yeah. Well, still,
not across the river like in New York.
Don't put down the Pirates. They have some great teams and great players there, Pags. You can't forget them. I'm sorry.
Hey, listen. I always paid respect to the Willie Stargell star that was in the vet. I mean, he hit the longest home run that was in the vet. I loved McCutchen back when he was playing with the Pirates. So, the Pirates did have some good teams, but they have been an irrelevant franchise for over 20 years, and nobody thinks about the Pirates. Nobody thinks about it. Not even in Pittsburgh. Not even in Pittsburgh do they think about the Pirates.
They were were a good team when Barry Bonds was there with a regular size head too.
They weren't too bad. I mean, come on.
He wore a normal hat size in Pittsburgh.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. His head grew with his stardom, I guess. It had nothing to do with steroids.
Well, I don't know about his hat.
Yeah, the cream and the clear. The cream and the clear. That's he was the one that invented it all. So
All right.
So let's turn back to the Eagles again before we let you go, Pags. I got a feeling that the Eagles are not going to be good this year at all, and it's going to be tough for a first-year head coach in Philadelphia. Which, as you said, the news down there, the sports down there is just as tough as New York. There's no doubt about it. In some cases, a little bit worse. How long are they going to give you a new head coach, Pags? They give him 2 years, 3 years,
3 weeks.
Yeah, a couple weeks.
I'm going to say. So you're saying that they're not going to be good, and I can understand why you say they're not going to be good. The energy level of this staff is off the charts. You know how I like to bring it. I bring a lot of energy, and this coaching staff has a lot of energy. And if he can get everybody to buy in, and that's really what it comes down to, because ultimately you could do all the right things, and that's kind of what Andy Reid did in the last couple of years. He did all the right things and couldn't get a winning team out of it. But if you can get everybody pulling in the same direction, all of a sudden this is going to be a much better team. The offensive line is coming back, and that was part of the biggest part of the problem on why we stunk last year. The cornerbacks are still going to be a question. We're going to have the quarterback obviously is a question mark because we've only seen 4 or 5 games out of him. My expectation is that they're going to surprise people. Besides the fact that they've got the easiest schedule that has been out in the NFL in the last 27 years or something like that. It's that the teams that they're playing against have an average record of like a 430. Average. So it's like my expectation is that they are, just because of the way that they have their schedule, they're going to be a lot better than everybody expects them to be. Well,
Pags, I mean, every fan thinks that. I mean, you should think that.
That's not being a homer. That's not being a homer. That's just looking at the reality of things.
Reality is you got a quarterback that hasn't really played in the NFL except for the past few games, and he was good in college. You're rebuilding the whole offensive receiver core there. You lost all your receivers. You got Devontae Smith, which is excellent. Your defensive cornerbacks are not that good, even after the draft. Your linebacker crew is so-so. Your defensive line is your strength. And it has been the Eagles' strength since I can remember. But you did have a great defensive backfield when you guys were winners. I'm not saying that you guys are going to go 0-16. I'm saying it's going to be a rough year for you. You guys are rebuilding, and I hope the Eagle fans understand that is what I'm saying. I don't want to see them just kick somebody out because at the end of the year you guys are 4-12 or 5-11 or whatever the record is.
Yeah, and I don't believe that's the case. Okay. I believe that they are going to give him a moment to try to figure this out. I understand that it's come to light that the upper management has a lot more say than we expected them to. That it's not really, a lot of these decisions aren't the coach's decision. The decisions are coming from the owner and the general manager in a lot of cases. So my expectation is that as long as he's doing what they want him to do, that he's going to be able to stick around at least for a couple of seasons. It's when he starts bucking the system, when he starts going against what their thoughts are, and he says, "Oh, well, I'm not going to do it. Well, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. I'm going to do what I do." That's when I believe that things will start to change. But the energy that this guy brings is, like I said, he's off the charts. Every time you hear them talk, like, we're fired up, we're fired up, we're fired up. Well, I know who gets fired. I'm fired up all the time. You know what I mean? I know what that energy level is like. And when you can sustain that, you start to elevate play. And that's what I'm believing, So I think that amongst everything else, you got Dallas, who had they saying that they didn't have a very good draft in the midst of everything. And I feel like some of the guys that they chose are going to be question marks in the locker room. And I feel that what the Eagles did was they started to solidify people in the locker room who are going to be leaders. And, I think of my softball group, a team that drinks together, wins together. And I feel like that's part of what's going on now in the Eagles locker room, that they're getting a team that plays together and has fun together, wins together. And that's kind of the mentality and the aura that they want to get around the Eagles team. And it may take a couple years to make that happen.
Right.
Winning cures everything. Losing makes things, accentuates it. So we'll see how that all plays out. But my expectation is that they're going to surprise people a little bit. I'm not saying that they're going to win the East. I ain't saying that they're going to the Super Bowl, and I'm not making any of those types of thought processes out of it. But I think they're going to be better than what you expect. And I feel that the one team that may not do as well as everybody thinks that's going to is going to be the Giants.
Possible.
I feel that they have a problem at quarterback, and until they get that portion addressed, this is going to be a make or break year for Danny Dimes.
I agree with you.
We're going to see if he can really live up to the challenge. I know that they were really upset that they did not get Devontae. And that's
they did all right. I mean, they got a first round draft pick plus a pretty exciting wide receiver from Florida. So I don't think the Giants are
come over the top, though.
Yeah. So that's all. So Pags.
Before Pags goes, I agree with his assessment that they've done a great job of starting to rebuild the locker room atmosphere and rebuild the positions that were weakened. I think this whole year for the Eagles is about finding out whether they have a quarterback or they don't. That's right. The whole thing about this year's about.
And now that the offensive line is coming back, I feel that he's not going to have to run for his life. And that was part of the problem in those 4 games, is that he was being chased all over the place. And you think about it in a different way. I mean, the Arizona game, we lost in the last few minutes of that game. Had won that game, there would have been a whole different thought process on making it to the playoffs. Yeah. So now you coulda, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Obviously it's you got to deal with what you got. They didn't play well against the Giants really in both games, but they happened to win one because the Giants are the Giants.
They could have won that second game, couldn't they, Pags, or no?
Against the Giants. I mean, they really had an opportunity, and they had a chance to beat Dallas as well, and they just. That's where Wentz could have come back in and started to solidify the starting role again, but it just didn't happen that way. It's the coaching was, they stuck with Hurts rather than try to bring Wentz in and maybe confuse the whole entire situation. But I felt that that's when they gave up the season against Dallas that week.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have folks, those who are watching and listening right now, I'll have Pags on tomorrow as my co-host. Replacing Jack for one day, as Keith is doing now.
This is not an easy job, Pags. Be careful. You got to.
Well, I'll make sure. Should I shave my head?
Shave the head. Get the glasses. You'll be good to go.
Glasses would be great. All right, Pags. So we'll see you tomorrow. You have a great day. Keep rooting, my friend. Keep rooting. All right.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
See you later. Bye-bye.
So there you go, folks. The Philly sports guy, Jamie Pags, with all your Philly information. And we love having him on every Wednesday, and he'll be co-hosting with me tomorrow. What I want to do before we get to our first break, we do something every Wednesday, Keith, that we try to let's see if I can bring it up here. And it kind of – we have a wall of fame.
Oh, I get excited by the Wall of Fame. I love the Wall of Fame.
Northeast Streaming Sports website. And we're in our basketball room right now. And today's Wall of Fame inductee is the great Oscar Robertson. 12-time All-Star, 1971 Rookie of the Year, 6-time assist leader, 25.7 points career average, 9.5 assists, 7.5 rebounds per game. Arguably, Keith, the greatest point guard of all time. So there you go, folks.
I would not disagree with that, by the way. And interestingly enough, I think he may be one of the most underrated great players in the history of the NBA. And it's interesting that this is the guy that you induct today because what Russell Westbrook just wrapped up his fourth season now of averaging a triple-double, and Oscar Robertson's the only other player ever to do it in the history of the NBA one time.
Very true. Very true. So, Oscar Robertson joins Wilt the Still Chamberlain in the Basketball Wall of Fame over at Northeast Streaming Sports.
Tremendous player.
You guys, if you get a chance, go over there to nessp.info. Check out the Wall of Fame. We got it, boxers, baseball, everything over there. The greatest of the greatest. So what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to take our quick official timeout, a few minutes, and we'll be back on the other side. As you heard the Philly sports guy putting down the Giants, well, we're going to have an answer for the Philly sports guy with the great Lance Meadow. We'll be right back after this.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211-INFO-LINE. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's the first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I've made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, though, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on live Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. And today I am lucky to have the talk show host, sports talk show host of TGI Sports Talk. Has a great show over there, folks. You get a chance. He'll be go over there and check it out. I mean, he's having a little problems right now with his sports site, but he's still broadcasting on Zodiac, Northeast Streaming Sports, and he's on the show with me today. And we just had the Philly sports guy on here, kind of making fun of the Giants a little bit. Keith, he was rude, but we're going to answer.
Rude's kind of a hard.
I don't know.
He's rude.
I don't know. I mean, he was kind of putting down the Giants a little bit, but guess what? We have the man that knows everything. Everything, I repeat, everything about the Giants. The hardest working broadcaster in the business on every platform.
Does Stephen A. Smith know that you call him the hardest working sportscaster in the business?
Well, listen, we got the hardest working broadcaster in the business, Lance Meadow, who's been on every platform from The Fan to Westwood One to ESPN, does his own show, The Big Blue Kickoff. He's on Giants.com, and he comes in when I ask him to talk about the Giants. The man just doesn't stop, and we appreciate him coming in every week. Good morning, Lance. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, guys. How's everything with you?
We're doing good. This is Keith Angle. Jack's on vacation. He has a better agent than I have, Lance.
I'm a younger Jack.
Yeah. So he's on vacation this week. So Keith from TGI Sports Talk came in and co-hosted with us today.
Good to meet you, Lance. Love your stuff.
Same here. Absolutely. Appreciate that.
We just had the Philly guy on, Jamie Pags, talking about the Eagles. And, of course, he's all pumped up that the Eagles are in the draft and everything. He's a homer. That's what he is, I think. But so am I when it comes to the Giants.
We are at the end of the day.
Yes, when it comes to the Giants, I kind of am too. But I'm also realistic, I think, Lance. And I want to kind of set the table here before we start. Joe Judge comes in last year. He puts together an unbelievable coaching staff, former head coaches, great coordinators. He starts building a team with a lot of excitement, intensity. The defense plays well last year. The offensive line near the end of the year picks up a little bit. They're gelling a little bit. But we thought the offense would be a lot more potent than they were. And the people that put down David Gettleman a lot, and there are quite a few that always say he's on a hot seat, has had two really good drafts and put together a free agent class this year that I haven't seen in a long time the Giants do. And I think that has a lot to do with when he first got there, that the funds weren't what they are now. He had to kind of plug and play, plug the players in, play the best he could, and try to keep Eli protected, which was very hard. But this year, he goes out, he gets a number one wide receiver. He gets another defensive back, a very experienced, good tight end. He picks up another good backup running back, and a backup quarterback. He really goes for it here in the free agency to rebuild the Giants on both sides of the ball, and then turns around again with a plan, working with Joe Judge, no doubt. And he does a move that I thought was almost brilliant, Lance, right? They wanted Devontae Smith. It looks that way anyway. You know more about it than I do. The Eagles move up and get him, but it looked like there was a plan in place for that. When they drop down to 20, they grab a very explosive wide receiver and get a few draft picks to include the number one draft pick from Chicago next year.
Well, I think the goal heading into this year was to try to collect some resources for 2022. I think they had that in the back of their mind that if the opportunity presented itself, they were going to go after that. And the rationale behind that, guys, is the fact that you have a deeper draft class next year, and in all likelihood, you'll have better access to the players because there should be a scouting combine. You didn't have that. That's why most teams would tell you their boards weren't very deep with high grades for players in this year's class. Part of it was you had a lot of players opt out, and it was the land of the unknown. So I think going in, they said, hey, if there's an opportunity to collect additional resources for 2022, even though there are clearly still some needs on this roster, let's go for it. Now, you referenced when the Eagles moved up to grab Devontae Smith. Is it possible they wanted Devontae Smith? I think there was interest in him. I think you could also make a case they could have grabbed Rashawn Slater and not done anything, one of the best offensive linemen. I would still make that argument. I think time is going to tell. But what was different this year, and this is where I think people who want to go back in history need some perspective. If you recall, a lot of people go back to the year, and this is when Jerry Reese was the general manager. This is not Dave Gettleman. When Leonard Floyd seemed to be their target. If you remember, the Bears moved up, and then they took Eli Apple, and everybody was like, well, they should have moved down. There's a distinct difference if the opportunity presents itself to move down versus wanting to move down. Those are two different things.
Right.
And I don't think the opportunity presented itself to move down that year. Why? Because if you guys go back to the draft, the next quarterback that was taken, this was the Carson Wentz, Jared Goff draft class. The next quarterback that was taken was Paxton Lynch. Nobody was moving up to grab Paxton Lynch. I think he went 26th overall to the Denver Broncos. This year, you had a situation where the Giants said to themselves, we like a few guys, but at the same time, the Bears really want Justin Fields. So why not move down a little bit? We'll still be in the ballpark of grabbing one of the guys we like. And at the same time, we'll grab resources for 2022. So the biggest difference is the desire for a quarterback was there this year from another team. It wasn't there sometimes in previous years. That's important.
Can I, real quick there, Lance, on the trading down topic? There was a lot of talk in I'm a Patriot fan and follow the Patriots very closely. There was a lot of chatter about Belichick wanting to trade up and possibly with the Giants. Was there anything to any of that, do you think, that kind of chatter?
Well, even when Dave Gettleman spoke to the media after the first round of the draft, he mentioned that there was some chatter from a few teams. I read some reports that the Vikings also were looking to move up, which is understandable. Maybe they want some competition for Kirk Cousins. I didn't hear anything specifically with respect to the New England Patriots, but I will tell you this. Heading into the draft, I said, New England's a patient team. There was a lot of speculation they were going to over-aggressively move up. And I said, I don't buy this run on quarterbacks. I just didn't buy it. I felt the top three would go. But then if you look at some of the other teams, the Carolinas, the Denvers, you could argue they needed a quarterback. But I don't know if they needed to go all out for a quarterback, considering you had Jared Goff and Sam Darnold, recent acquisitions. You just brought in Teddy Bridgewater in Denver. And I'm glad that teams actually said, let's help our quarterback, as opposed to bringing in another guy. So I think New England played it perfect. They let the board come to them. They didn't make an aggressive pitch to try to give up additional resources, and Mac Jones fell right into their lap. So kudos to the Patriots from that standpoint.
Yeah.
So Lance, with this year coming up, this is, I think, Gettleman's really his third year, if I'm correct, maybe going to his fourth at the most.
This will be the fourth. Yeah, 18 was the first year.
Right. And with Judge going into his second year, they got to kind of have a system more in place than they did the first year, because they're kind of just feeling each other out, feeling what they want to do. The offensive line, as you said, still to me is a little iffy, right? You got Thomas, who's a rookie. That they don't know what they're going to do with the Z-man. I don't know if Hernandez and the Z-man are gonna compete for that slot. I pretty much think Lemieux's set at guard. I mean, he had a great rookie year to me. And then you got the tackle spot. You know, you've got the expatriate, speaking of the Patriots, that opted out because of his child, and I have no problem with that last year. And then you got Pert sitting at that tackle, and we're not talking about the backups right now. We're just talking about probably the starting five. Do you think it's a better idea to start with Pert at right tackle and let him just play it out, or do you think they should keep rotating him in like they've been doing with Thomas and on the right side, where he really didn't get a lot of action?
I would not be surprised if Matt Parrott is the swing tackle this coming season. I could see Solder taking over at right tackle. Remember, he played that his rookie season with New England, so he has previous experience there. There's no threat of Andrew Thomas being moved out of left tackle, so I don't think we really need to discuss that. I think the bigger question is how the guard competition plays out, because they brought in some veterans. Zach Fulton, who was with the Houston Texans, he's a veteran who they brought in. Jonathan Harrison, the former Jets center/guard, he could be another option. And then, of course, as you referenced, Shane Lemieux, the fifth-round pick, and Will Hernandez, who's coming into the final year of his rookie deal. He caught COVID. I think that was a factor. But then when he came back from COVID, he didn't reclaim his starting job. So I do think that this is a huge year for him to prove that he could show some level of consistency. Lemieux, Parrott, and Thomas, they were all rookies last year. The Giants drafted 3 offensive linemen. I think we tend to forget, and nobody's saying that these are all finished products. I'm with you. And if they wanted to go and grab Rashawn Slater, I'm with you. I would have made a very strong argument for that. I think there was room to add somebody who could play all 5 positions, which many would make a case for Slater. He could play center, guard, and tackle. They could have used a guy like that. But the internal confidence of those 3 offensive linemen that they drafted last year is very high. And it's much higher than clearly the court of public opinion. So they feel good about developing these individuals. Remember, they've got a new offensive line coach in Rob Sale. Pat Flaherty, the former Giants offensive line coach, is back on the coaching staff as an advisor. So you're going to have some new voices, and you've got some competition with the veterans. And that, to me, is how things are going to play out. Is it possible there's a free agent veteran out there that they bring in before camp? I wouldn't rule that out. Maybe they're monitoring the health of a guy or two. But I think they're going to give this young nucleus as much of an opportunity to try to win out starting jobs as humanly possible. And that's basically their vision as it stands right now.
How does sitting out a year affect a guy like Nate Solder? And, he's not the only guy, obviously, but how does that affect these guys, do you think, Lance?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's been quite some time since they put the pads on. And it's one thing to say that you're working out on your own. And we haven't really had an opportunity to hear from Nate Solder since they restructured his contract and there was the announcement that he was going to return. I'm sure he, like I said, was working out on his own throughout the course of last season, but it is different than going up against defensive linemen on a daily basis. So, yeah, he's far from a guarantee, but I look at it this way. He's got a whole lot more experience than Matt Peart. Matt Peart, of the 3 rookies, Peart played 15% of the offensive snaps. Guys, that's a very small sample size. So when everybody says, oh, Matt Peart's going to be the right tackle, there's no question. Even though Nate Solder's been a left tackle, I would still like his chances coming off an opt-out year than Matt Peart necessarily just running away with things. And Peart also has experience playing on the right and the left side going back to his UConn days. So I would not be surprised if they're going to compete, but I would not be surprised if Solder starts out and then, to your point, they rotate Matt Peart in because they did the exact thing last season. But even with the rotation, he only played 15% of the offensive snaps. That's the lowest percentage of any offensive lineman on the roster last year.
Right.
So Lance, we talk about a lot of people maybe being on the hot seat, right? We talk about Daniel Jones. He's now supposedly got enough weapons to score some points. Picking up a lot of receivers and picking up that new rookie too. That's very exciting. I think he had 10 touchdowns and almost 1,000 yards last year receiving. How about Evan Ingram? I mean, here's a guy that we've been waiting patiently for this guy to break out. He seems to drop the ball in the worst times when we're going to have a chance to put the game away. Do you think he's on the hot seat this year, Lance?
Well, it's a critical year simply because of the contract structure. So by definition, yeah, you could argue he's absolutely on the hot seat from that standpoint. Remember, he was a 2017 first-round pick. So 17, 18, 19, 20, this is the 5th year. This is the final year of the rookie deal. So after this, he's either going to re-sign with the Giants or he's going to pursue free agency. It's funny you brought up Evan Ingram because it's the same thing with respect to the 3 offensive linemen they drafted last year. The internal confidence is much higher than the court of public opinion because anytime you bring up Evan Ingram, he's a polarizing figure. And not necessarily because he's a bad individual. It's just you have some people that love his upside and his potential, and then you have other people that have no patience and want to see him gone. And that's not going to change overnight. I will tell you that. I think, though, if you look at the tight end group entering this year, they brought in Kyle Rudolph. They have Caden Smith, who's shown some nice flashes, and they still have Levine Toilolo. So they've got a variety of guys that could do a little bit of different things. And Jason Garrett, remember, he didn't shy away from tapping into his depth chart at tight end. This is very similar to the New England Patriots. They go deep. He went in that Seattle game, if you recall, when Daniel Jones got hurt, he utilized 3 tight ends. They blocked Seattle. They pounded the football. So while this is a critical year for Evan Ingram, I don't think they're going into this year saying Evan's the savior at tight end. They believe Kyle Rudolph could be a red zone target and somebody that could give them an additional lift for touchdowns to help the scoring get up. But yeah, I think it's a critical year for Evan Ingram to show consistency. I think you go into every year. See, here's the thing about Evan Ingram. When you look at the narrative, the first few seasons, it was, can he stay healthy? Well, he proved he could stay healthy last year. The problem is the execution didn't meet the health. Now you want to see a season where the execution and the health are parallel with one another.
Yeah.
That to me is, if I'm Evan Ingram, that's what I'm looking at this season.
Yeah, don't you think the addition of Kyle Rudolph helps a guy like Evan Ingram and his approach to the game? Won't it just improve him just having him in the same locker room with him and then on the same practice field? And all of that tight end group, actually. Doesn't just his presence make them better, or can it?
Sure. Well, he's a veteran. He's a polished veteran, right? He's been in the league for a number of years with the Minnesota Vikings. I would say, I want to take it a step further. You do bring up an interesting point. Kyle Rudolph's a very good blocker. The last few years, people wonder, well, why did his numbers go down? The Vikings asked them to block. They were a run-first team, right? Whether it be Adrian Peterson, whether it be Dalvin Cook. So if you were to ask me how much can he help him, they may not ask Evan to block because they may say, Evan, we've got enough guys between Levine Toilolo, Hayden Smith, Kyle Rudolph. You be the receiving tight end, they'll block. So that may actually be the biggest way that he could help somebody like Evan Ingram.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, it is. It is a good point. They signed Barkley to the 5th-year option. Last couple of years been banged up. He's listen. This guy, when he's healthy, is the best. I think you could at least say top 3 in the league as far as running, catching, excitement, can score from anywhere on the field. He's got great hands, great running back. He reminds me a lot of Barry Sanders with his moves and his balance. If he gets hurt again this year, Lance, do we start thinking about maybe moving him? I mean, this is if he can't stay healthy, and some players, no matter how great they are, can't. It's just it's something about them, whether they overwork out or whether they get unlucky and get hit the wrong place, wrong time. I mean, do we start maybe looking towards another running back in the draft next year?
Well, they drafted somebody late this year. I don't know how much of an option Gary Brightwell is going to be in terms of running the football. If you look at the 3rd running back on the roster last year, even with Barkley getting hurt, Dion Lewis only had, I think, just under 30 carries. So I don't know how much of a role he's truly going to have. And if you ask the Giants, they hope Saquon Barkley, to your point, stays healthy so they don't have to utilize the 3rd running back. You've got to wonder, though, if Saquon does get banged up again, how much value does a guy like that have on the trade market? As dazzling as he is, if you have a running back of all positions, which is not a position that a lot of teams value, right? They say we could draft a guy in the 2nd round. We could draft somebody in the 3rd round. How much resources is a team willing to give up for somebody that was taken with a top 3 pick not too long ago? So when you throw out, if he gets banged up, do the Giants look to trade him? They may dangle him out there. But if you expect to get a 1st-round pick in return for Saquon Barkley at this point, I don't see that happening. So his value is not ultimately that high. I would think, if anything, you hold on to his resources for the 5th and final year. And if somebody gets hurt around the trade deadline and a team needs a running back, maybe you can work out a deal. But I just question if, unfortunately, he goes down the road of the injury bug. I just wonder how somebody like that is really going to hold a great deal of value on the trade market. You at least need to question that.
I agree with that. So the Giants, they get their wide receiver, but then they go where I think they needed to go. And again, this is why I'm saying, Lance, there's definitely a plan, right? They go after pass rushing, almost specialists, I would say. I mean, last year they put pressure on the quarterback in a lot of different ways. They did a good job with that with the defense, but they knew that they'd have to get a guy that could, be on the other side of Leonard Williams that could also put pressure on the quarterback. They picked up a couple good ones. Aziz, they got, I think it's pronounced Ojulari. Am I saying it right? Ojulari. One is a 6'7". He reminds me a little bit of Too Tall Jones. Got big arms, big man. And the other one's got a lot of speed. He led the SEC in sacks last year. I think it was 8.5 sacks he had. So does this mean that, and a lot of people don't realize that to have a sack happen, and I just want to say this for a second, a lot of things have to happen. A lot of times it's not just one-on-one. You got people taking up gaps, trying to fool the line just to get that second to your specialist to make that sack. So it is a team effort to get a sack, and some people don't realize that. But they did need someone else, besides Williams, so that he didn't get doubled and maybe the tight end don't chip him or maybe the running back just don't pay attention to him, where they can get pressure on the quarterback, and they exactly did that, Lance.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the most attractive features of a guy like Ojulari, I would argue it's not necessarily the sacks. And to your point, that's only half the battle. I think you want to see the quarterback hits consistently, because then you know that the defensive lineman or the pass rusher is impacting the quarterback more often than not. That to me is a much more important statistic than necessarily sacks, which is just finishing the job. But he had a lot of tackles for loss, which means he's a disruptive player that gets in the backfield. And keep this in mind, guys. Dalvin Tomlinson left in free agency to sign with the Vikings. If you look at the numbers, Dalvin wasn't a big sack guy, but Dalvin got into the backfield. He was third on the team in tackles for loss. You have to make up for that. And here's where, if you have a plethora of edge rushers or defensive linemen, you may need 2 to 3 guys to make up for those numbers. So Ojulari is attractive from that standpoint. And then Ellerson Smith, who they took out of Northern Iowa in the 4th round, he's another one. He didn't play as in a big conference, but he also had tackles for loss and sacks and a disruptive guy. Very raw, because he actually was a 190-pound tight end a few years ago, and he just completely transformed his body. So Ojulari, a little bit more of a proven commodity, and he did stay healthy each of the last 2 seasons. But I look at those 2 guys, the tackles for loss are far more promising than necessarily what they could do from a sack standpoint. I also don't think it's any coincidence that between free agency and the draft, they have brought in a number of pass rushers. Why? Because Patrick Graham doesn't rely on one guy being the savior. He's going to rotate players. And you know this firsthand from the New England days. The Patriots, they love to blitz sometimes their linebackers, but one game it could be one guy, and another game it could be a completely different guy. And I think that's the philosophy they're bringing over to the Giants. It's not just going to be Leonard Williams and Robin. It's going to be Leonard Williams and multiple superheroes who they can hopefully help Leonard Williams out with, assuming, of course, Leonard Williams can get back to double-digit sacks, which also is a question mark, guys, because he only did that once in his career, which was last season. Let's not forget that.
He got pretty highly rewarded for that one good year, too.
He did indeed. Absolutely. He's not complaining. His bank account. I'll tell you that.
Right.
Yeah, that's the truth. Leonard's good at against the run, too. He's not just a pass rusher specialist. The reason why I was mentioning the size, and Jack brought this up last week, which I think is a great point. I think pressure is going to be a major statistic more than sacks, as you were saying, even more than hit slants. Because if you can get a big guy that's 6'7", getting his hands up in the air, just to make that quarterback pull the ball back down, I mean, that quick screen out into the flat with those big paws out there is going to be a little bit more difficult too. And that's why I was mentioning his 6'7" frame. And not only that, he's explosive too. So again, and of course they picked up another defensive back too. They got a team full of defensive backs now. They were thin at it before. They got. It seems like the whole team is defensive backs now, which I'm not complaining about. Trust me, because you need those. But it sure looked like, last year it looked like they went heavy offensive line, and they had those linebackers at the end, and of course McKinney, but heavy defensive line, offensive line last year, and this year it just looks like they went heavy defensive line, Lance.
Well, and I think part of that is because of the fact that you look at this division. If you want to make the playoffs, you want to win the NFC East, you got to look at who you're going up against. And what are they going up against? Well, Dak Prescott's coming back. Dallas has a plethora of weapons between those 3 receivers, Blake Jarwin, the tight end, Zeke. You've got to have multiple players that can match up with that group, whether it's the guys up front, whether it's the defensive backs. Washington has a lot of playmakers, and they went out and they signed Curtis Samuel from the Carolina Panthers. And Philadelphia just added Devontae Smith. We know they still have 2 tight ends. They've got a number of running backs, Miles Sanders, to name a few. You're going to have guys that could cover on the back end, and you're going to have guys that could get into the backfield and tackle and also disrupt the quarterback. Because think about this. Dak can move. He can rotate out of the pocket. Jalen Hurts, if he wins the job, he's got some mobility. And Ryan Fitzpatrick, I don't think is a huge threat, but Ryan Fitzpatrick could take off and run. You can't dismiss that. You can't overlook that. So you have to have some flexibility and versatility up front. And then you also need to be able to not be predictable in your secondary. So, for example, they brought in Aaron Robinson out of Central Florida in the draft. Aaron Robinson is known to be a slot guy. Well, there could be games where he plays in the slot. There could be games where Darnay Holmes plays in the slot. There could be games where they bring down Xavier McKinney to play in the slot. And the reason being is I don't think Patrick Graham wants to lay out the film, and if you're going to play the Giants, who's going to match up with your wide receiver in the slot. So I think the rationale behind adding a lot of playmakers on defense is 1, matching up with your divisional foes, 2, protecting yourself from injury, and 3, fitting into Patrick Graham's scheme. And I think they at least have the ability to meet all of that criteria right now.
You know, going to Mac's point in yours too, Lance, the length of these guys is important as the quarterback position kind of morphs into smaller guys being acceptable. I mean, Dak and Jalen Hurts are neither one of them is bigger than 6'2", right? I mean, and around the league, there's a lot of shorter guys. So that length and pressure can really change the complexion of the games without sacks even. So
Sure. Well, to your point, as we were talking about earlier, if you can't sack the quarterback, you put up a hand and you bat a ball down, that's just as effective as a sack, right?
Yeah.
You're still telling the opponent you're not going to get any yardage on that down, and you didn't lose yardage, but you prevented them from maybe getting a manageable second or third down. Buffalo, for example, the Bills, they are so good. Part of their defensive scheme, if you have a chance to watch them, they teach all of their guys to get their hands up and just bat the balls down. Get your hands in the passing lanes. They're so good at that. So, yeah, there's no reason why the Giants can't subscribe to that philosophy. And with Leonard Williams, with Azeez Ojulari, Odenigbo, who they signed in free agency, all these guys have big wingspans. Ellerson Smith. So I wouldn't be surprised, absolutely, if the goal is, hey, in the process of getting after the quarterback, make sure you put your hands up, because that could be just as effective.
Right.
Definitely. And Lance, one more before we let you go. Now, if you look at the East on paper, no matter what Pag says, if Dak Prescott is healthy, I'd say maybe the Cowboys have the edge. If he's not as good as he was on paper, the Giants, I think, match up as one of the better teams in the East this year. I'm expecting them to be in the hunt for the playoff even more this year than they were last year. They got the free agents. They got some weapons now. Their defense was playing good last year. This is Daniel Jones, fourth season? Third season? Yeah, and he should be coming into his own. So if you look on paper, maybe Dallas has an edge, which really didn't matter in the last few years. But on paper, the Giants are right with them, Lance.
Well, I've said this time and time again. I don't think there's a juggernaut in this division. I don't think there's anybody that I think is overwhelming. I think all four teams have question marks. Dallas, to your point, has a really good offense. They're getting multiple offensive linemen back. The team was just plagued by injuries last season. Dak's coming back. They're going to be able to score points. They're going to put pressure on all of the defenses. The question is, how effective is that Dallas defense? That's going to be the million-dollar question, because they've got a new defensive coordinator and they changed some personnel. I would assume that group's going to be better than they were last year. So that means that team will be more balanced. And the Giants, you hope that the defense could pick up where it left off last season. They played much better down the stretch. And the offense, to me, is all going to be based on the health. We named all of these weapons, but remember, Golladay missed a lot of time with a hip injury. Then you take into consideration Sterling Shepard and Saquon Barkley, who've dealt with injuries. Darius Slayton was banged up. Kyle Rudolph is coming off of foot surgery. Evan Ingram. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but you at least need to be realistic here. Hey, things can look great on paper, but looking great on paper and executing on the field are two different things. But yes, there's a lot to like in terms of the makeup of the Giants roster. The one team, though, I would not sleep on is Washington. And I'm not just saying that because they won the division. I really like what Jack Del Rio, the defensive coordinator, and Ron Rivera did. That defense, right? Yeah, it was fantastic. Listen, they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. They handed Pittsburgh their first loss. I don't think that was a coincidence. They got a really good defensive front.
And they added to it. They added to it in the draft, too. They did a great job.
Absolutely. And then look at the offense. Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson, Logan Thomas, the former quarterback who had a heck of a year at tight end. Yeah, you could tell me all you want about, Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to throw 4 interceptions. But you know what? He may not need to if the defense continues to perform well. That's the type of team. They can win 23-20. Do not sleep on the Washington football team.
And well, he's going to be 4-0, Lance. Anyway, he starts out 4-0 everywhere he goes when he starts out, right?
Well, there you go. Yes. But whether or not he can then win the next 4 games or win maybe 2 of the next 4, that'll be a big question mark.
That's the question.
Here's the other thing that I think is important to note. Philadelphia, to me, has the most question marks. And it's understandable. They got a new coach. They are retooling because they were plagued by injuries. But notice last season, I would have told you, right, all of the teams are bringing new coaches with the exception of Philadelphia. So in a COVID offseason, who has an edge? Philadelphia. It turned out that was the team that did not have the edge. So the reason I throw out the Eagles is, hey, We've seen crazier things in this division. Maybe Philadelphia surprises a lot of people. Sirianni did a nice job with that Colts offense with Frank Reich. Yeah. This is a division where I can make an argument for all four, but to come full circle, the Giants, expecting them to be in the mix for a playoff spot because 7 teams make it in each conference, I don't think that's crazy at all. No.
Yeah, I don't either.
Quarterback's got to take better care of the football to start with, right?
And you hit it right on the nose. It's on Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
As much as the weapons he has around him are attractive, can he protect the football? Because the minute you don't protect the football, the minute you take an explosive offense and you diminish the value. So can they protect the football is going to be huge, without saying 100%.
Yeah.
Well, Lance, again, thank you for jumping in on us after the draft. Love having you on. Love hearing your views on the Giants. And we'll be in touch again. Check out Lance over at Giants.com. He does a lot of work over there. And look for him on the other shows, too. Does a great job wherever he goes. Thanks again, Lance, for coming in.
I appreciate you guys having me on the program. Thanks so much. Take care, guys.
So there you go, Keith. Oh, he does a great job wherever he goes. And he's off and he's to the races. I mean, he's just gone. Yeah, he's man, that guy knows a lot about the Giants. But anyway,
not hyperbole either, right? I mean, it's just facts and
right at you.
Cut to the chase. Not a lot of baloney. So.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get him laughing every now and then, and that's probably the best you can do with him. He's not going to banter back and forth with you for sure.
No, that's why I had to get my little Fitzpatrick note in there because he's going to be 4-0. He's got to be.
Definitely, and I mean, he's a professional. He's been doing this for a long time, and making a lot of money at it too, which really doesn't matter. He's just a great guest.
People make money doing this.
Yeah, they make a lot of money, Keith. Yeah, they make a lot of money. So, Keith, we're going to take our last break for the day. We'll be back on the other side, guys. We got so much sports still to cover. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma.
I love you too. Okay, how about tasting the stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye. Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. I'm Mac, your host, with a special co-host in for today for Jack, Keith Engel from DGI Sports Talk. And Keith, we just had on two great guests. We had the Philly sports guy, Jamie Pags, and Lance Meadow from Giants.com. Both know their stuff, and I always love having them two guys in.
Great to be here today and filling in for Jack. Big shoes to fill, but makes it easy when we got guests like Pags and Lance to, man, they know their stuff, and you give them a little cue and off they go. So.
Yeah, it lets you rest for a little bit. I'm going to take care of a few things here. First, we are on Northeast Streaming Sports, folks. Check out the site. You can either subscribe to it on YouTube channel, which we would love for you to do, and you can even follow us if you Facebook search N.E. Streaming Sports. And we're also on Zodiac TV. We also got some other stuff in the works where we might be going on a different platform, folks. So we just keep on growing with your support out there. As we do, of course, we'll get in bigger guests and more information and more shows for you. So over there at Northeast Streaming Sports, we're having a great time and growing every day. The Mac and Jack Sports Show has adopted the Connecticut Falcons, a semi-pro football team. This is a couple of their practices. They won last week, and they're 2-1 right now in the semi-pro league, the Tri-Borough League. They'll be having like a Sun Bowl, I think it's called, down in Florida, where teams from different leagues go down there and they play for like their Super Bowl. So we're working with them on the side, and we'll be bringing you more. In fact, Sunday, Keith, I'm interviewing their coach and their starting quarterback. So Sunday, I'm going to have them on. Yeah, so we're going to get more into the Connecticut Falcons as we go. Tomorrow, folks, on the show, the Philly sports guy, Jamie Pags, will be co-hosting with me. We'll have on Carter B with the NHL review. Man knows everything about hockey. We'll be having on the Iceman John Scully for our boxing news. John, 9-time Golden Glove champion, middleweight, light heavyweight contender for the belt. Also has been an analyst, a writer, and has trained 4 different champions. He's helping train Artur Beterbiev right now, the light heavyweight champion. Man knows everything about boxing. And we'll have a special guest on tomorrow, Keith, Randy Lang, PR consultant, the head consultant over there with the Jets. So we're going to have him on tomorrow talking about the Jets draft, which was an incredible draft. Oh, they had a great draft.
Yeah.
So he'll be on with us tomorrow to talk about the Jets draft. So
I got to tell you, Mac, between your show and all the shows on Northeast Streaming Sports, we got it covered. I mean, we got a couple great hockey shows. We got baseball shows. We got football covered wall to wall. I mean, even wrestling. I mean, everything's covered.
Yeah. So
football now, I mean, it's everything.
Yeah. And we'll be adding a couple shows as football season comes up too. So guys, stick with us. We're going to just keep on growing and then hopefully become a powerhouse. We're knocking on the door, Keith. We haven't gone through it yet, but we're getting there over
Great
there.
Stuff.
Streaming sports, yes. So let's dip into the NBA. There weren't a lot of games on last night. Charlotte beat Detroit 102-99. The Suns beat the Cavaliers 134-118. New Orleans got past the Warriors 108-103. Dallas won 127-13. The Kings beat the Thunder 103-99. And the Clippers got by the Raptors 105-100. The only local game, Keith, was the Bucks beating the Nets. Durant had 32. Kyrie had 38 in the losing effort.
It was a big game for the Nets last night. They needed to win this game because the Bucks have kind of got their number recently. And I think going into the playoffs, this was a huge game for the Nets. And I don't like where they're trending. I really don't. I think they've lost 3 in a row now. So,
yeah, I mean, you think it's because Harden's not playing? I mean, he was the main cog there with the assists. Not only could he score, but he was really playing a great point guard this year. fact, amongst the leaders when he was playing. You think that's what's hurting him right now? Or do you think, let me finish it, I'll set you right up. Or do you think it's the chemistry of the big three?
Yeah, you went exactly where I was going to go. I mean, yes, Harding being out doesn't help, but the fact that these guys, there's 6 games left in the regular season, these guys do not have a lot of minutes under their belt together. So even if they all are playing come the first round, they're going to have some trouble with the chemistry because they just have not been on the court enough at the same time. And you can't just flick a switch and be playing like the Sixers, who have played pretty much together as a team all year. I mean, Embiid has missed some time and Simmons missed some time, but still, they've got a lot of minutes. Look at the Knicks. The chemistry in the Knicks is amazing compared to the chemistry on the Nets. And something like that can really take over in the playoffs, I think.
I agree with you. When the Philly guy was on, we talked about a lot about matchups too. And listen, the Nets, when they're on fire, can score 130 points.
Yeah.
But that's not against a great defense either. And they don't have a great defense, Keith.
Yeah, agreed. I agree. And I just can't say enough that Durant has not played enough this year, especially with Harden. And it's good. That is not the time you want to get used to learning each other's tendencies in the first round of playoffs, because funny stuff can happen. And you heard Pags being scared of the first round against Washington with the best team in the conference.
Right.
And you don't know what's going to happen in that first round of that playoff. So the Nets could be one of the teams to watch going out early because of those chemistry issues.
Do you think having Kyrie on that team holds back? Now, listen, Durant, when he's healthy, there's no doubt about it. He's probably top 3 player in the league in both divisions.
Without a doubt.
But with Kyrie there, Harden's willing to give up the ball. Kyrie, I don't think, is willing to give up the ball. I think Durant should be the leader of that team, both in speaking and in playing. And it's like Kyrie wants to be the leader so bad, he'll go out of his way to get the spotlight to do this. Do you think that's hurting Durant?
Yeah, that's not leading the team. What Kyrie does is not leading the team. Leaders don't, Durant's missed time because he's been injured. Kyrie misses time because I feel like I need a vacation and take a mental, week off. That's not leading your team. I'm sorry. He cannot lead a team. Look at what happened in Boston. Look at what happened in Cleveland. Yeah, he had a big shot to help them win a championship there, but, you had the best player in basketball playing beside you. That had something to do with it. Kyrie's not a leader. Kevin Durant, when he's healthy, is not only a top 3 player, but he's a leader on the court and off the court, as you said. So Kyrie's a bad influence on this team. He's just a bad fit everywhere he goes. I'm never going to be a fan of Kyrie. I just cannot get there.
Yeah, I hear you. So today we have Boston at the Magic. Boston still has a chance to get in that, that top 6. The 76ers are playing at Houston. The Knicks in a real tough one, Keith. This is going to be tough for them to win. They're playing the Suns, one of the best teams in the West.
Yeah, the Knicks, it's going to be a very tough matchup. They just lost to them. They played well. It was a tough game at home. They lost to Phoenix here a week or so ago. The Knicks are in the middle of a tough stretch. They want to finish in that 4th or 5th spot would be ideal. But they're in a tough stretch going out west here. They got Denver, they got Phoenix, they got both LA teams. I mean, the Lakers are hurt and banged up. They're kind of in the same situation as the Nets when you look at it from not having played together, but they're still a good team. They got San Antonio when they get back home. But this stretch out west, these next 4 games are going to be it's a gauntlet they got to run here. And if they come out of this with a split, that's going to be a big victory for the Knicks. Excuse me.
Well, this is where you make or break your run, right? I mean, you got to beat these teams if you want to.
Yeah, I agree.
To participate, and if they can't, well then they're not going to be ready when they go up against the 76ers or some team like that in the East anyway. So,
and I think they're in a position to capitalize and do just that because they're playing really good basketball right now. I mean, you go back to the middle of the early April, they've only lost 3 games since the start of April.
Right. They've been playing great ball, Keith. There's no doubt about it. Number 1 defense in the league. So hopefully they at least get out of there with a split. So in the NHL, Keith, last night locally, the Penguins continue to roll. Now, this is probably the biggest surprise in the East over there in the East Division in NHL. We all thought it was going to be Boston, the Islanders, the Flyers, and the Capitals we thought would be in the top 4. But Pittsburgh really came up and grabbed that division this year near the end.
Yeah, I agree. They played very, very well. Always been a fan of their organization. Always seems to kind of, rebuild on the fly. They don't get really bad, but they did surprise here. And this is a tough division. I mean, you got some really good teams that are not going to go to the playoffs. I mean, the Rangers, they've sputtered a little bit here recently, but, they really overcame a horrendous start. They're going to go stay at home. The Flyers have had some good spurts this year. Again, they're petering out there down the end, but some good teams not going to the playoffs here in the East.
Yeah, I think the Flyers have pretty much given up. I mean, I think I think the coaches kind of lost that locker room over there.
I agree.
The Devils beat Boston. Yeah, and the Sabres beat the Islanders, 2 of the bottom tier teams down there, both by 4-3. I know it's not going to affect them getting the playoffs, but you don't want to go in losing. I mean, especially the teams you should win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the Islanders have lost a couple in a row, I believe. And, while the record overall is very good, yes, momentum is a real thing in sports. We just talked about the Knicks. The Knicks can really build some momentum going into the playoffs. The Islanders had a chance to do the same kind of thing here. And they're going the wrong way. There's only, I don't even know how many games. There's probably less games left than maybe in the NBA left in the NHL.
Yeah, did they get a start date for hockey yet for the playoffs? I mean, I've been following. I didn't check yesterday.
I'm not really sure. Let me just look at one thing quick. I don't see anything solid on the date.
That's weird. I mean, you're almost done. You're almost done with the season.
I think the final game's on Monday, right? I mean, I think.
Yeah. Is Toronto the one holding it up? Is it the Canadian League? I would say the division holding this up.
I think that could be part of it, is because I guess the first couple rounds won't matter because they're going to play only amongst themselves in Canada, right? But the travel is going to be a problem. I don't know. I think they're still considering, and I wish we had one of our hockey guys to kind of go to, and I'm sure you can ask Carter tomorrow.
Yeah.
But when I had Jim Beringer on my show here 2 weeks ago or week and a half ago, they're still considering going to some kind of bubble at some point during the playoffs when the Canadian teams, are settled. Because again, they can't go back and forth across the border yet. It's still going to be an issue. And COVID's a real thing yet in Canada. And in my real life job, our home offices are in Canada, and we've got other offices in Ottawa and Montreal. They've had a pretty good spike the last month or so. So it's
what I would imagine they would have to bubble down here. I imagine that all the teams, for this to work right,
they really should.
The top 4 teams would probably come down here to the United States. But
you mean to start the playoffs, right?
I would imagine. I would imagine maybe that's what the holdup is, because the season's over and you don't have any kind of plan in place to start.
It seems odd that you're right that we're this far down. We don't have a solid plan, or maybe we're just missing it real quick. And I guess that'd be a great question for Carter tomorrow. I hope that's where you'll. Hang on one second. I think I might have found something here. Regular season schedule extended to May 19th after Canucks, so they don't end until the 19th. The start date for the playoffs still unknown. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, because I know it was supposed to be somewhere around the 22nd about a month ago, and I haven't heard nothing about it. So right now, anyway, the hockey playoffs are still up in the air. We're going to start, but the divisions will be decided by then for sure, and then we'll see what they do over there. So we got the NBA coming to an end, and the West is out of sight right now. I said this in the beginning of the year, and I can play the tape to prove it to you. I thought the Lakers were going to have a major problem this year because they're not deep enough when they started, right? You have Davis and you got LeBron. If they're healthy, they got the pieces to work around them to go again to the championship.
Yeah.
I said right from the start, Keith, if LeBron has a lot of miles on his tires, Davis is a great player, but he needs someone else there. He can't do it by himself with good pieces. LeBron can still with good pieces around him.
Yeah,
So
by himself.
Yeah. I think he's a little older now. Maybe he's not as effective as he was, or maybe he can't go as hard as he used to. But it sure looked away to me.
He can't go as hard for as long. I mean,
Right.
that's the problem, right?
Right. So, I mean, they got to have LeBron, healthy LeBron, number one. If Davis is hurt or not playing up to 100%, they're in trouble. They may get knocked out early.
Look, they're not guaranteed of not being in the play-in game because they're not playing. They've been sliding steadily down the seedings, and they're only a game ahead of Portland for the 7th spot. So, again, and LeBron's missed a bunch of games now in a row again. And as we talked about, even when they get to the playoffs, should they get there and get by the play-in game, you're going to have the same situation you got with the Nets. You got your 2 stars who have not spent a lot of time on the court together this year, and it's going to be an issue. They're a candidate to go out in that playoff, or that if they fall into that play-in game, they're a candidate to lose there or lose in the first round for sure. Because they're going to get a good team.
I think it's a good possibility that they don't even see a second round. I really do. I
do
really
too.
do. And that would be a big surprise because, of course, everybody had them going to the championship this year. The Jazz is kind of running out of energy there. I think.
Yeah, I still think Quinn Snyder really is the coach of the year in the NBA myself. He rarely gets the recognition he deserves. You got to give it to Thibodeau or Snyder in my mind. And Snyder's done a great job, but they are starting to run out of gas a little bit. They're still battling for the top spot back and forth with Phoenix. And Phoenix is a huge surprise. Nobody saw them, being 30 games over 500 here at this point in time. So maybe Monty Williams is the coach of the year now that I think about it. But
could be.
The West is much deeper than the East, obviously, because even the teams that are down there fighting at, 5 and 6 and 7, they're really good teams compared to what you're going to see in the East, right? So
I think the East, you got the top 3 teams that can play over there in the West right now, right? You got the Nets when they're healthy, if they play together. You got the 76ers, and you got the Bucks. Would all 3 of those teams be in the playoff hunt over there? The Knicks may be an outside chance.
They might have they probably would be much closer. They'd be around 500 maybe at best, I guess, if they were playing out West. But that's all conjecture, right?
Definitely. We're just looking at the teams, how they're staffed and everything in the talent over there. But there's nothing better. You can't measure chemistry. You can't measure pride. You can't measure hustle, right? You can't measure this. No. That's not on paper. That's
why you play the games, right? Because if you played on paper, it'd be easy to pick winners. But that's why we play the games.
So, Keith, at this time, getting close to the end of the show, we always do This Day in Sports History, where we take a look back at some of the things from the past. And, of course, the past sets up the present, which goes into the future and all that happy stuff. So we're going to take a quick look at –
That's a little philosophical there.
Yeah, I have my moments, Keith. I mean, maybe that coffee's kicking in now. I don't know. So 2 baseball legends had an event. 1904, Cy Young pitches the first perfect game. In 1904, of course, the Cy Young, no one will ever catch him with 500 and something, 11 wins. I mean, that's never going to happen.
Good grief. Nobody's going to win 300 again the way the game's played today.
I agree with that. So the Cy Young Award named after him. He pitches his first, the first perfect game versus the Philadelphia Athletics. Ty Cobb goes 6 for 6 with 4 runs and 5 RBIs. Said to be the nastiest player on the field.
Yeah, not a great person, but actually a tremendous player. Real quick story, and I'll get my jack on here right now. When Pete Rose was chasing the hit record that Ty Cobb held, obviously, before he did, they asked Pete Rose, and this is 1984 or whatever, if Ty Cobb played today, would he be able to hit, 350, 400? Would he be able to play in today's game? And he goes, I see. He probably only hit about 290. And he goes, what do you mean 290? Ty Cobb's one of the great hitters of all time. And Pete said, well, he'd be like 98 years old. So
That's funny. I got a quick story to throw back at you. Mickey Mantle said about Pete Rose, if all I did was get 3,000 and just hit the ball for singles, I'd be wearing a dress. So there you go. So
I like your story better, actually.
yeah. So Mickey Mantle taking a shot at Pete Rose way back when. In 1969, the Milwaukee Bucks signed number 1 draft pick Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, of course, known by Lou Alcindor back then.
Yeah.
Before he did his change. I mean, was there any? I mean, you could say there are great centers, and you could put them in a class. But was there anyone really greater than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
Well, great's a relative term, right? Great at what? Great player and putting up numbers. Probably, Wilt put up better numbers than anybody. Great winners. Bill Russell won more than anybody. So, I mean, those 3 guys are you can rank them depending on what criteria you want to look at in any order you want. I'll take Russell first and Jabbar second and Chamberlain third.
Right.
But they're all great players for different reasons. And actually, Jabbar didn't win a shortage of titles himself. Actually, he must have. I don't know. He must have won 5 or 6, right? I mean,
yeah, I think he was at least 5, Keith.
Yeah.
And
Wilt was a different guy, man. Great player, but I don't know that he cared about the team stuff the way the other 2 guys did. And
no,
maybe it's not fair, but
I mean, I think Wilt Chamberlain once said, and about Bill Russell, he said, with the Celtics, he wouldn't have won as many championships as Bill Russell because he was more, as you said, into himself.
Yeah.
He wanted to take over the game, and that the team aspect wasn't his strength. He wanted to, they went to him at all the crucial moments where Bill was willing to give up the ball and do his defense and run the team from the floor from center as he did. I think Kareem is kind of a mixture for them too.
Different player than both those guys for sure. And obviously, that sky hook was a weapon that was unstoppable, basically. So yeah, great player and certainly one of the top 5 players of all time, probably.
There has never been another player that ended up having a rule made in college that you couldn't dunk anymore.
Yeah.
That's why you got that sky hook. I mean, unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, he actually changed the rules of college basketball for a while. So that's very interesting.
Good point.
And we mentioned Pete Rose. Pete Rose became the 14th player in history to get 3,000 hits. Of course, he went on to win that, be the leader of all time. Pete Rose, to me, is a guy that was baseball savvy, one of the hardest players I've ever seen play in my life. But I don't want to say not the brightest, but he seemed to get confused between what baseball was, what the rules were, his fame. I mean, as far as just baseball, Keith, I don't think there's a better player in baseball than Pete Rose. I really don't. I mean, if you're going to talk about hustling all the time, playing the game the way it's supposed to be played, no one better. I can't think of anyone better.
He did more with less talent than any guy that I can think of, if you want to just take it from that standpoint.
Agreed. And I mean, was a constant on the field. No one played harder. I mean, of course, we know in the All-Star game, he actually knocked the catcher almost out trying to score when the All-Star game meant something.
Exactly. He kind of changed Ray Fosse was headed towards a great career, and he changed his career path for sure.
Right. So I mean, I don't take nothing away from him there. And on a note, I think, and we've discussed this on the show before, I want to get your opinion. I think that the Hall of Fame, they should put them all in. Pete Rose, Barry, anyway, put them all in. Heck with it. Let the fans decide, because there are so many different things, asterisks. There's so many things you could put on players going in the Hall of Fame, especially baseball.
Spell it right out. Pete Rose, great player, banned for betting on baseball.
Right.
Barry Bonds, career tainted by use of steroids. Put him in the Hall of Fame, but tell the story. That's what the Hall of Fame's for. You can't say these guys aren't great players.
Right, exactly. And then let the fans decide what they want to think about it.
I agree. But again, tell the whole story. Don't whitewash it either, right?
Right. Be as honest as you can about what happened. Same thing with Shoeless, Jack Johnson, same with him. I mean, we don't there's the problem. I
agree,
The problem with it, Keith, is that players have been cheating and doing things to get ahead in every sport.
Spitballers. Gaylord Perry's in the Hall of Fame, threw an illegal pitch his entire career.
Right. And taking different medications, doing all kinds of stuff that weren't probably the best ideas to do. They didn't break a rule, supposedly. Steroids wasn't a rule till later. So, I mean, there's so many different things you could say. I say put them all in and just let the fans decide.
Warts and all, put them in. I'm with you.
I agree. Well, folks. Thank you for tuning in today on our Wednesday show. Tomorrow we'll be back on Thursday. 3 big guests, a new guest co-host. Keith, thanks for coming in today. Enjoy doing the show with you.
Always have a good time.
Don't work too hard today, my friend, at your other job. I mean, that's Keith does bunches of jobs. I think he has 4 of them. I'm not sure.
Feels
But
like
anyway,
it. No,
yeah,
it always feels like it.
I hear you, my friend. Have a great – thank you again, Keith, and we'll see you on Friday.
Yeah, Friday morning.
Yes, sir. So we'll see you then, folks. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same